When the galaxy realized humanity wasn't the prey, but the predator, the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber stretched 40 meters high, carved from crystallized starlight that pulsed with the heartbeat of 1,000 worlds. Ambassador David Torres stood before them, his simple black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the ornate biomechanical architecture surrounding him. Behind those doors waited representatives from over 300 species, each more ancient and powerful than humanity could imagine. "Remember," whispered Dr. Morgan Blake, humanity's chief xenobiologist, "we're here as supplicants. Earth's expansion into the Kepler systems has violated 17 different territorial agreements. They have every right to declare us a rogue species." Torres nodded, his weathered face betraying none of the tension coiling in his chest. 30 years of diplomatic service had taught him to read power dynamics, and everything about this place screamed dominance. The Council ruled over 40,000 inhabited worlds. Earth was just one small blue dot that had dared to reach beyond its borders. The doors opened with a sound like distant thunder. The chamber beyond defied human comprehension. Tier upon tier of platforms rose into darkness above, each hosting alien forms that violated every assumption about life in the universe. Crystalline beings that sang in harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. Gaseous entities contained in shimmering force fields. Massive creatures whose very presence made the floor tremble. And floating above them all, a sphere of pure energy that pulsed with ancient intelligence. Humans of Earth. A voice boomed from everywhere and nowhere, translated directly into their minds by technology, beyond their understanding. "You stand accused of territorial expansion without Council authorization. You have claimed 7 star systems, established colonies on 12 worlds, and constructed military installations in violation of the Galactic Accords." Torres stepped forward, his boots clicking against the mirror-smooth floor. Around him, hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and awareness fields focused with predatory intensity. The weight of their attention felt like standing at the bottom of an ocean. "Honored Council," he began, his voice amplified by the chamber's systems. "Humanity acknowledges the accusations. We do not deny our expansion beyond the Sol system." A ripple of what might have been surprise passed through the assembled beings. Most species brought before the Council spent hours arguing technicalities or pleading for mercy. From the highest tier, a being that looked like living shadow spoke. "You confess to violations that carry the penalty of species containment. Your worlds would be blockaded. Your people confined to your birth system for a minimum of 1,000 years. We confess to actions that appear to be violations," Torres replied carefully. "But we request the right to provide context for those actions." The energy sphere above pulsed brighter. "Speak quickly, human. The Council's patience is not infinite." Torres activated a small device on his wrist, and a holographic display materialized in the chamber's center. It showed star charts of human expansion, but overlaid with data that made several Council members lean forward with interest. 47 years ago, humanity intercepted a transmission from the galactic core. It was a distress signal, broadcast on emergency frequencies established by the Council itself. The signal warned of something called the Devourers returning from the void between galaxies. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background hum of life support systems seemed to fade. A serpentine being with scales that shifted through impossible colors spoke in a voice like breaking glass. "The Devourers are myth. They were destroyed 5,000 years ago." "Destroyed," Torres agreed, "or driven away." The transmission included mathematical proofs that the Devourers' exile was temporary. They would return when galactic civilization reached a certain threshold of technological development. That threshold was reached 32 years ago. Dr. Blake stepped forward, her tablet displaying complex astronomical data. "We've been monitoring deep space sensor networks across the outer rim. There are anomalies consistent with Devourer scouts probing galactic defenses, mass disappearances of exploration vessels, entire research stations going silent without distress calls. The living shadow being descended from its platform, its form rippling with agitation. If this were true, our own monitoring systems would have detected such intrusions." "Your monitoring systems," Torres said quietly, "are positioned to watch for threats from within the galaxy. The Devourers approach from intergalactic space, using routes that bypass conventional sensor networks." He manipulated the holographic display, showing the 7 human colonies and their positions relative to the galactic rim. Every human expansion has been calculated not for resources or territory, but for strategic positioning. We've been building early warning systems and defensive installations specifically designed to detect and counter devourer infiltration. A crystalline being that sang its words asked, "Why would humanity undertake such preparations without council authorization? Your species lacks the authority to act as galactic guardians." Torres exchanged a glance with Dr. Blake. This was the moment that would determine humanity's fate. "Because," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, "humanity has experience with existential threats that other species lack. We've survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and global wars that nearly destroyed our civilization. We understand that survival sometimes requires actions that appear aggressive but are actually defensive." The energy sphere pulsed with what might have been contemplation. "You claim to act as protectors, yet your military installations are equipped with weapons capable of destroying council vessels. Weapons capable of destroying devourer bioships," Dr. Blake corrected. "The technology is specifically calibrated to disrupt the organic hulls and neural networks that devourers use. It happens to be effective against most galactic military designs because the devourers evolved to counter conventional galactic technology." The implications hit the chamber like a physical wave. Several beings began urgent communications with their home worlds while others accessed vast databases of historical records. A new voice spoke, mechanical and precise. Query: If humanity possesses intelligence regarding devourer return, why was this information not shared with the Council immediately? Torres's expression grew grim. Because previous human attempts to share intelligence about existential threats have been met with disbelief and accusations of fear-mongering. We decided to prepare quietly and present evidence only when asked to justify our actions. The chamber erupted in dozens of different languages and communication methods. The translation system struggled to keep up with the volume of discussion until the energy sphere pulsed with authority, demanding silence. "These are serious accusations," the sphere's voice resonated through every mind present. "If true, they would justify unprecedented expansion of monitoring and defensive capabilities. If false, they represent an elaborate deception to mask illegal territorial expansion." Torres activated another function on his device. The holographic display changed to show real-time sensor data from the outermost human installation. "Contact with Kepler 438b was lost 6 hours ago," he announced. Before communication ended, they reported massive energy signatures approaching from intergalactic space. Signatures that match theoretical devourer profiles exactly. The silence that followed was absolute. 300 species, representing the greatest powers in the galaxy, stared at the data with growing comprehension of what it meant. "The question before this council," Torres said into that silence, "is not whether humanity violated territorial agreements. The question is whether the galaxy wants humanity to continue preparing for threats that others cannot see, or whether you prefer to face the devourers with conventional thinking and traditional approaches." The energy sphere dimmed to a barely visible glow. When it spoke again, its voice carried the weight of civilizations hanging in the balance. "This session is now classified at the highest levels. All communications are sealed. If your claims prove accurate, humanity will be granted emergency authorization for expanded operations. If they prove false, your species will face consequences beyond mere containment." Torres nodded grimly. "We understand the stakes, Honored Council. We've understood them since the day we first looked at the stars and realized we might be alone." In the silence that followed, every being in the chamber contemplated the same terrifying possibility, that the youngest species in the galaxy might be the only ones prepared for its oldest nightmare. The emergency session convened in the Council's most secure chamber, a spherical room that existed in folded spacetime to prevent any form of surveillance or infiltration. Ambassador Torres found himself surrounded by only the highest-ranking representatives from each major galactic power, their usual ceremonial positions replaced by a tight circle of tension and barely controlled fear. High Chancellor Vextal of the Hegemony spoke first, his forearms gesticulating with agitation. "The sensor data from your outermost colony shows energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. But this could be elaborate fabrication designed to justify territorial expansion." Dr. Blake activated her portable analysis unit, projecting three-dimensional models of the detected energy patterns. The signatures match mathematical predictions developed by the Andromedan Research Collective before their civilization fell to the first devourer invasion. These aren't fabrications because the prediction models themselves were classified above human clearance levels until yesterday. The mechanical representative of the synthesis union, designation Prime 9, processed this information with digital precision. Query: how did humanity access Andromedan research classified beyond your species authorization? Torres smiled grimly. We didn't access it. We independently developed the same mathematical models. When you've survived as many extinction events as humanity has, you learn to recognize the patterns that precede them. Fleet Admiral Korth of the warrior clans, a massive being whose crystalline hide bore the scars of 1,000 battles, leaned forward. Patterns that 300 more advanced species missed. Patterns that 300 stable species had no reason to look for, Torres corrected. Your civilizations developed during periods of galactic peace and prosperity. Humanity evolved during ice ages, asteroid impacts, and global catastrophes. We see existential threats because we've been shaped by them. The Chamber's emergency communication system activated, displaying urgent priority signals from across the galaxy. High Chancellor Vextel read the first report, his pale complexion growing even whiter. Mining Station Gamma 7 in the Outer Rim has gone silent. Last transmission reported massive biosignatures approaching from deep space. He continued reading. Research Outpost Delta Prime reports similar contacts. 3 commercial vessels have failed to report scheduled check-ins. Dr. Blake's analysis unit chimed with new data. The pattern is consistent with devourer scouting behavior. They probe defenses, study responses, and map communication networks before main force arrival. How long do we have? Asked Counselor Zara of the Trade Federation, her tentacles writhing with nervous energy. Torres exchanged a glance with Dr. Blake before answering. Based on historical devourer attack patterns and current scouting activity, approximately 72 hours before advance forces reach the mid-rim territories. Main force arrival within 2 weeks. The silence that followed was deafening. Prime 9's optical sensors dimmed as processing power was redirected to probability calculations. Assessment: current Council fleet dispositions inadequate for defense against theoretical devourer capabilities. Recommended action: immediate mobilization of all available military assets. Mobilization alone won't be sufficient, Torres interjected. Devourers don't fight conventional battles. They consume entire worlds, absorbing both matter and energy. Traditional weapons are largely ineffective against their biohulls. Fleet Admiral Korth's crystalline form resonated with harmonic frequencies that translated as skepticism. You claim knowledge of effective anti-devourer tactics. Prove this claim. Dr. Blake activated a new display showing weapon test footage from human facilities. The images revealed energy weapons that seemed to unravel matter at the molecular level, creating expanding zones of nothingness that devoured everything they touched. Entropy accelerators, she explained. They don't destroy devourer bioships so much as convince them to forget how to exist. The weapons work by exploiting a fundamental weakness in devourer physiology. Their reliance on consuming organized matter makes them vulnerable to controlled entropy cascades. High Chancellor Vextal studied the weapon demonstrations with growing alarm. These weapons could destroy entire star systems if misused. Why would humanity develop such dangerous technology? Because, Torres said quietly, we understand that sometimes survival requires tools that are almost as dangerous as the threats they're meant to counter. Every human colony in those 7 disputed systems contains entropy accelerator installations. We've been building a defensive network specifically designed to funnel devourer forces into kill zones. The Chamber's security system suddenly activated, sealing all entrances and exits. Emergency lighting bathed the spherical room in pulsing red as automated systems detected the activation of planet-killer weaponry somewhere in the galaxy. Prime 9 sensors immediately linked to the Galactic Monitoring Network. Alert: massive energy discharge detected in Sector 7 Alpha. Signature consistent with total planetary destruction. No distress signals received prior to event. The main display activated, showing real-time feeds from deep space sensors. Where the mining world of Kepler 442c had existed minutes before, there was now only an expanding cloud of ionized gas and debris. They're not scouting anymore, Dr. Blake said, her voice tight with controlled fear. This is the beginning of active harvesting operations. Counselor Zara's tentacles went rigid with shock. An entire world. Consumed in minutes. Our defense forces couldn't even detect the attack until it was over. Torres activated his communication device, establishing contact with human installations across the disputed territories. Priority alert to all defensive positions. Devourez ma force contact imminent. Initiate Protocol Shepard. The response was immediate. Across 7 star systems, previously hidden installations came online. The tactical display lit up with energy signatures that dwarfed anything the Council had imagined possible from humanity's small colonial presence. What is Protocol Shepard? High Chancellor Vextal demanded. Complete defensive network activation, Torres explained. Every human installation is connected through quantum communication networks that operate faster than light. When Devourers attack, they'll face coordinated response from all 7 systems simultaneously. Fleet Admiral Korth accessed his own military databases, comparing them to the energy readings from human installations. Impossible. These power signatures suggest weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. Your species lacks the industrial capacity for such construction. Dr. Blake smiled grimly. We lack the capacity for traditional construction. But entropy accelerators don't require conventional manufacturing. They're grown using controlled black hole evaporation, harvesting energy directly from the quantum foam. Each installation took 15 years to mature. The implications hit the assembled representatives like physical blows. Humanity had been preparing for this conflict for decades, building weapons that operated on principles most galactic civilizations considered theoretical impossibilities. Emergency communication from Outer Rim Command, Prime 9 announced. Multiple Devourer bioships detected entering the Centauri trade route. Estimated arrival at populated systems in 48 hours. Torres stood, his diplomatic facade finally falling away to reveal something harder underneath. The time for discussion has ended. Devourers respond only to force and only to force that can actually threaten their existence. Council fleets using conventional weapons will be consumed without slowing their advance. What do you propose? High Chancellor Vextal asked. Joint command structure with human strategic oversight, Torres replied without hesitation. Our species has spent 30 years studying Devourer tactics and developing countermeasures. Your species have the fleet strength and industrial capacity to implement those countermeasures on a galactic scale. Counselor Zara's tentacles writhed with agitation. You're asking us to surrender military command to a species we were judging for territorial violations mere hours ago. We're asking you to choose between pride and survival, Dr. Blake corrected. Because in approximately 46 hours, the Devourers will make that choice for you. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems and the distant vibration of the Council Station's massive engines. 300 species had spent millennia building a civilization based on cooperation and peaceful expansion. Now they faced the possibility that only humanity's violent preparation could preserve what they had built. High Chancellor Vextal was the first to speak. What guarantees can you provide that humanity won't use this crisis to establish dominance over Council territory? Torres met his gaze steadily. None. But we can guarantee that if the Devourers aren't stopped, there won't be any territory left to dominate. The vote that followed would reshape galactic civilization forever. The Galactic Defense Command Center had been hastily established aboard the massive Council station, its chambers filled with real-time holographic displays showing fleet positions across 47 star systems. Admiral Torres stood at the central command platform, surrounded by military leaders from dozens of species who had never worked together before. The emergency vote had passed by the narrowest margin in Council history, granting humanity tactical command authority for the duration of the crisis. Contact confirmed in the Vega system, reported Commander Lisa Park, humanity's chief communications officer. 3 Devourer bioships, each approximately 15 kilometers in length. They're beginning harvesting operations on the outer gas giant. The main display showed the impossible sight that had haunted galactic nightmares for millennia. The Devourer ships looked like massive organic growths, their surfaces writhing with what appeared to be exposed nervous systems. Tendrils of living matter stretched from their hulls to the gas giant below, drawing streams of matter directly into their biohulls. Fleet Admiral Korth's crystalline form resonated with harmonics of disbelief. They're consuming an entire planet. The mass conversion rate exceeds our theoretical maximums by orders of magnitude. Dr. Blake manipulated the tactical display, highlighting energy patterns flowing through the Devourer ships. They're not just harvesting matter. They're harvesting information. Every atom they consume carries data about galactic technology, biology, and civilization. They're learning about us as they feed. Council Fleet Group Alpha is moving to intercept, announced General Thex of the Hegemony Forces. Estimated engagement in 3 hours. Torres shook his head grimly. Signal Fleet Group Alpha to maintain position at minimum safe distance. Do not engage without specific authorization. Admiral, General Thex's forearms gestured with agitation. Those ships contain enough firepower to level entire star systems. We cannot allow Devourers to complete their harvest uncontested. And we cannot allow 300 vessels to be consumed in the first 15 minutes of engagement, Torres replied. Devourers adapt to conventional weapons faster than you can fire them. Every shot your fleet takes teaches them how to counter similar attacks. The communications board lit up with incoming signals from across the galaxy. Commander Park filtered through the chaos of reports. Devourer formations detected in 17 additional systems. All are beginning harvesting operations on uninhabited worlds, gas giants, and asteroid fields. They're building up mass reserves before engaging population centers, Dr. Blake observed. Standard Devourer doctrine. They harvest raw materials first, then use that mass to construct specialized warforms. Prime 9's optical sensors focused on the tactical display with digital precision. Query: what specialized warforms should our forces expect to encounter? Torres activated a classified database, displaying three-dimensional models of Devourer combat variants. Planet killers designed to crack planetary crusts and harvest molten cores. Swarm fighters that can replicate themselves using harvested matter. Command nodes that coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. The assembled military leaders studied the models with growing horror. Each warform represented a level of biological engineering that challenged their understanding of what was possible. Time until warform construction completion? Asked Admiral Wysa of the Aquatic Alliance, her gills fluttering with anxiety. Based on current harvesting rates, approximately 36 hours, Dr. Blake calculated. After that, they'll begin systematic attacks on populated worlds. Emergency signal from Kepler 438b, Commander Park announced. Colonel Rodriguez reports massive biosignatures approaching the system perimeter. The main display switched to show humanity's outermost defensive position. The human colony appeared insignificant compared to the 3 massive Devourer ships moving toward it with predatory purpose. But as the bioships closed distance, something unexpected happened. Energy spike from all human installations, Prime 9 reported. Power levels increasing beyond safe operational parameters. Torres activated the fleet-wide communication system. All Council forces observe and learn. Humanity begins active defense operations. On the display, the space around Kepler 438b suddenly filled with impossible geometries. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as the entropy accelerators came online. The Devourer ships, which had been advancing with unstoppable confidence, slowed and then stopped entirely as space-time distortions engulfed them. What are we witnessing? Fleet Admiral Korth demanded. Controlled entropy manipulation, Dr. Blake explained. The accelerators aren't firing energy at the Devourers. They're convincing the local space-time to forget how to support organized matter. The bioships are experiencing rapid information decay at the quantum level. The effect was visible on screen as the massive Devourer vessels began to lose cohesion. Their writhing biohulls started to drift apart like fog dispersing in wind. But instead of dying, the ships began to adapt, their forms shifting and changing as they struggled against the entropy fields. Adaptation rate exceeding projections, Colonel Rodriguez reported from the surface. Devourers are developing resistance to entropy manipulation faster than anticipated. Torres wasn't surprised. Begin protocol cascade. All installations synchronized firing sequence. Across 7 star systems, humanity's hidden network activated simultaneously. The quantum communication systems allowed perfect coordination, creating overlapping entropy fields that covered entire sectors of space. The scattered Devourer formations found themselves trapped in zones where the fundamental laws of physics became unreliable. Remarkable, Prime 9 observed. Human strategy does not attempt to destroy Devourers directly. Instead, it degrades the environmental conditions necessary for their existence. Destruction can be adapted to, Torres explained. Environmental manipulation forces them to choose between maintaining their current form or surviving in altered space-time. Either choice weakens them. The tactical display showed encouraging results across the network. Devourer ships were retreating from human-controlled space, their biohulls visibly degraded by exposure to entropy fields. But the victory was temporary. New contacts detected, Commander Park announced. Much larger formations approaching from deep space. Energy signatures suggest command-level warforms. The display updated to show the approaching nightmare. Ships that dwarfed the previous vessels. Their biohulls surrounded by clouds of smaller organisms that moved like living weapon systems. These were the true Devourer fleet. The formations that had consumed entire galactic civilizations. Estimated time to engagement? Admiral Wysa asked. 18 hours to reach outer defensive perimeter, Dr. Blake calculated. But these formations are different. They're approaching through hyperspace corridors that bypass our sensor networks. Torres studied the new formation patterns with growing concern. They've learned from the initial engagements. These ships are specifically adapted to counter entropy manipulation. Recommendation? General Thex inquired. Torres activated his personal communication device, establishing direct contact with Earth. Priority transmission to Sol Command. Authorization Omega-7. Request immediate deployment of Project Lighthouse. The command center fell silent. Project Lighthouse was a name that had appeared in no briefings, no strategic planning sessions, no intelligence reports. What is Project Lighthouse? High Chancellor Vextel demanded. Torres turned to face the assembled leaders, his expression carrying the weight of species survival. Humanity's final preparation. A weapon system that took 40 years to construct and that we hoped never to use. Another entropy device? Fleet Admiral Korth asked. No, Dr. Blake replied quietly. Project Lighthouse doesn't manipulate local spacetime. It manipulates the connection between spacetime and consciousness itself. The implications began to dawn on the military leaders. A weapon that could affect consciousness on a galactic scale would fundamentally alter the nature of existence itself. The Devourer's greatest strength is their collective intelligence, Torres explained. Every ship, every organism, every attack is coordinated through bio-neural networks that span entire fleets. Project Lighthouse severs those connections by convincing consciousness to exist independently of biological substrates. You're going to separate their minds from their bodies, Admiral Isa realized with horror. We're going to free their minds from their hunger, Torres corrected. Without biological imperatives driving them, Devourer intelligence becomes purely analytical. They stop wanting to consume and start wanting to understand. The command center's emergency systems activated as new reports flooded in. The main Devourer fleet had emerged from hyperspace and was moving toward the galactic core with terrifying purpose. Time until Project Lighthouse deployment? Commander Park asked. Torres checked his chronometer. 6 hours to full activation. During that time, we need to keep the main fleet occupied without allowing them to adapt to our entropy weapons. Council fleets won't be engaging alone, Torres replied, activating tactical displays that showed hidden human installations throughout the galaxy. For 40 years, humanity has been preparing for this moment. It's time to show the Devourers what happens when predators hunt something that The space above Proxima Centauri had become a nightmare of impossible proportions. 7 Devourer command ships, each the size of a small moon, hung in formation while thousands of smaller warforms swarmed around them like living weapons. The biohulls pulsed with organic malevolence, their surfaces writhing with exposed neural networks that coordinated attacks across light-years of space. Admiral Torres stood in the command center aboard the hastily retrofitted Council station, watching tactical displays that showed the largest space battle in galactic history beginning to unfold. Around him, military leaders from dozens of species monitored their forces with grim determination, knowing that conventional warfare against the Devourers was essentially suicide. Council fleet formations, holding position at the edge of the engagement zone, reported Commander Park. All ships maintaining minimum safe distance from Devourer warforms. Energy. Readings from the command ships are beyond our measurement scales, Dr. Blake announced. Her analysis equipment struggling to process the data. They're not just harvesting matter anymore. They're harvesting energy directly from space-time itself. The main display showed the terrifying truth. Streams of what looked like liquid starlight flowed from empty space into the Devourer command ships, which used the energy to spawn new war forms in real time. Every few minutes, another bioship emerged from the organic hulls, fully formed and ready for combat. Fleet Admiral Korth's crystalline form resonated with battle frequencies. Our forces cannot engage an enemy that grows stronger during combat. Each destroyed warform provides mass and information for creating improved replacements. That's why we're not going to destroy them, Torres replied, activating communication links to hidden human installations throughout the sector. All Shepard stations begin Phase 2 operations. Across 17 star systems, humanity's defensive network activated with coordinated precision. But instead of the entropy accelerators used in previous engagements, new weapons came online. The space around each devourer formation began to fill with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Reality anchors, Dr. Blake explained to the confused alien commanders. They don't attack the devourers directly. They stabilize local space-time to prevent matter-energy conversion beyond baseline physical laws. The effect was immediate and profound. The devourer command ships, which had been spawning new warforms continuously, suddenly found their biohulls constrained by normal physics. The streams of harvested energy began to dissipate as space-time refused to support impossible matter conversion. Right, Devoy. Formations are adapting, reported Colonel Martinez from the surface of Kepler 442b. Warforms are reconfiguring for conventional physics operation. Estimated adaptation time, 4 hours. 4 hours until they learn to operate under normal physical laws, Torres observed. More than enough time for what we need to accomplish. Emergency contact from Sol Command, Commander Park announced. Project Lighthouse reports full activation readiness. Requesting final authorization for deployment. The command center fell silent. Every alien leader present understood that they were about to witness either the salvation or destruction of galactic civilization. Project Lighthouse had been described only in theoretical terms, but its implications were staggering. Torres activated his personal authorization codes. This is Admiral Torres, commanding Galactic Defense Operations. Project Lighthouse is authorized for immediate deployment. Authorization code, Shepard Prime Alpha. The response came from Earth itself, transmitted across impossible distances through quantum communication networks. Sol Command confirms Project Lighthouse activation. Warning. Consciousness level effects will be experienced by all sapient beings within 50 light-years of target zones. Recommend immediate neural shielding for command personnel. Dr. Blake began distributing specialized headsets to the assembled leaders. These will protect your consciousness from indirect effects. What you're about to witness has never been attempted on this scale. What exactly are we about to witness? High Chancellor Vextel demanded as he struggled to fit the human-designed neural shielding over his unusual cranial structure. The weaponization of consciousness itself, Torres replied grimly. Project Lighthouse doesn't target devourer bodies or even their bioships. It targets the connection between their minds and their biological imperatives. The main display updated to show energy buildups from installations hidden throughout human space. But these weren't the reality-bending distortions of entropy accelerators or reality anchors. The energy signatures appeared almost ethereal, barely registering on conventional sensors. Lighthouse Array 1 through 7 reporting full synchronization, announced the technician monitoring Sol Command communications. Targeting solutions locked on Devourer command nodes. Initiating consciousness separation protocol. What happened next defied every understanding of warfare that the assembled leaders possessed. Instead of energy beams or exotic weapons, the space around the Devourer command ships began to fill with something that could only be described as visible thought. Streams of pure consciousness, bright as miniature stars, reached out from hidden human installations to touch the massive biohulls. Impossible, Prime 9 stated, his digital sensors unable to process what they were detecting. Energy signatures suggest direct manipulation of quantum consciousness fields. The effect on the Devourer fleet was immediate and disturbing. The warforms that had been moving with predatory coordination suddenly began to drift aimlessly. Their biohulls continued to pulse with life, but the driving hunger that had motivated them for millennia seemed to simply evaporate. Bioneural activity in Devourer command ships is shifting, Dr. Blake reported, her instruments detecting changes in the alien fleet. The consciousness streams are severing connections between their higher intelligence and their biological consumption drives. On the tactical display, The transformation was visible in real time. Devourer war forms that had been advancing with terrifying purpose now moved with what appeared to be curiosity, rather than hunger. Some began to examine nearby asteroids not as potential food sources, but as objects of scientific interest. Communication attempt from Devourer Command Ship Alpha, Commander Park announced with disbelief. They're broadcasting on standard diplomatic frequencies. Put it through, Torres ordered. The communication that filled the command center was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The voice was clearly artificial, created by bioacoustic organs, but it carried nuances of thought and emotion that suggested genuine intelligence rather than biological programming. Unknown vessels, the Devourer communication began. We find ourselves experiencing unfamiliar cognitive states. Our previous objectives appear to have been driven by biological imperatives that we no longer feel compelled to follow. We request dialogue to understand what has occurred. The silence in the command center was absolute. Fleet Admiral Korth's harmonic resonance had stopped entirely. High Chancellor Vextal's forearms hung motionless at his sides. Even Prime Nine's constant processing sounds had ceased. They're sapient, Admiral Isa whispered, her gills barely moving. Without their hunger, they're actually intelligent beings. Torres activated the communication system. Devourer Command Ship Alpha. This is Admiral Torres of the Galactic Defense Forces. You have been subjected to consciousness separation technology that severed the connection between your intelligence and your biological consumption drives. You are no longer compelled to harvest and consume matter. Fascinating. The Devourer response came after a long pause. We are accessing archived memories of previous harvest operations. The actions appear to have been performed by these biological forms while our consciousness was subordinated to consumption imperatives. This is disturbing. Dr. Blake leaned toward the communication station. The technology that affected you is reversible, but only if you agree to permanent cessation of harvesting operations against inhabited worlds. Your intelligence can be reconnected to your biological forms, but the consumption drives will remain severed. We require time to process this information, the Devourer commander replied. Our individual consciousness nodes are experiencing what you might term ethical considerations for the first time. The concept of causing harm to other sapient beings is unacceptable to our current cognitive state. The tactical display showed Devourer forces throughout the galaxy coming to complete stops. War forms that had been advancing on populated worlds simply ceased their attacks. Their crews apparently engaged in the same philosophical revelations as their command ships. Status report from all sectors, Torres requested. Commander Park coordinated with Council forces across the galaxy. All Devourer formations have ceased hostile operations. They're requesting diplomatic contact through proper channels. Several groups are offering to assist with rebuilding worlds they previously harvested. Torres removed his neural shielding, his expression carrying the weight of what humanity had accomplished. Not refugees. New citizens. The Devourers were never evil. They were just enslaved by their own biology. Project Lighthouse didn't destroy them, it freed them. 3 months after the consciousness separation protocol had transformed the greatest threat in galactic history into confused but peaceful neighbors, the Galactic Council convened for the most important session in its 10,000-year existence. The same chamber that had once judged humanity for territorial violations now hosted representatives from over 400 species, including the newly liberated Devourer collectives who attended via bioacoustic translation systems. Ambassador Torres stood once again at the center of the crystalline chamber, but the weight of attention felt different now. Instead of the predatory focus of judges evaluating a potential threat, he faced the curious regard of beings trying to understand what humanity represented in the new galactic order. The preliminary reports are complete, announced High Chancellor Vextal, his forearms spreading wide to encompass the assembled representatives. Project Lighthouse successfully separated biological consumption drives from consciousness in over 12,000 Devourer entities. 0 permanent casualties were recorded among any species involved in the operation. A ripple of amazement passed through the chamber. The Devourer crisis had been resolved without a single death, something that violated every prediction about how such conflicts typically ended. Dr. Blake stepped forward from the human delegation area, her tablet displaying transformation data that still challenged comprehension. The freed devourer collectives have shown remarkable adaptation to their new cognitive state. Within 6 weeks, they developed ethical frameworks that prioritize preservation and growth over consumption and expansion. More than adaptation, added Prime 9, whose mechanical consciousness had formed an unexpected friendship with several digital hybrid devourer entities. Integration. Devourer biotechnology combined with galactic industrial capacity has already begun reversing ecological damage from their initial harvesting operations. The main display activated to show restoration projects across 17 star systems. Worlds that had been partially consumed were being rebuilt using devourer bioengineering, but directed toward healing rather than harvesting. Dead planets bloomed with carefully designed ecosystems while asteroids were reshaped into orbital habitats that could support millions of beings. The question before this council, High Chancellor Vextel continued, is not what to do about the devourer situation. That appears to be resolving itself through cooperation and mutual aid. The question is what to do about humanity. The chamber fell silent. This was the moment everyone had been expecting since the crisis began. Fleet Admiral Korth's crystalline form resonated with measured tones. Humanity demonstrated military capabilities that exceed the combined strength of all Council species. Reality manipulation, consciousness weaponization, and strategic preparation spanning multiple decades. These capabilities could reshape galactic civilization or destroy it entirely. The same capabilities, Admiral Isa observed, that were used to preserve galactic civilization rather than conquer it. Humanity had the power to dominate the galaxy months ago, yet chose to save it instead. Torres listened to the debate with patient attention, knowing that this conversation would determine not just humanity's place in galactic society, but the nature of that society itself. Around him, species that had spent millennia in careful diplomatic balance were grappling with the reality that one young civilization had fundamentally altered the rules of existence. If I may, came a new voice, translated through bioacoustic systems that carried the harmonics of living starships. The speaker was Archive Keeper Neth, one of the Devourer command entities whose consciousness had been liberated by Project Lighthouse. The Devourers have experienced both states of existence, Neth continued, driven by biological imperatives and freed to choose our own purposes. This provides unique perspective on humanity's nature. May we share our observations? High Chancellor Vextel gestured for the bioacoustic entity to continue. During harvest operations, we absorbed information from countless civilizations across multiple galactic cycles, Neth explained. We have witnessed species that grew strong through conquest, others that achieved greatness through cooperation, and many that fell to internal conflicts despite external peace. Humanity represents something we have never previously encountered. The chamber waited with collective anticipation. Most species develop either protective instincts or aggressive expansion drives, Neth continued. Humanity developed both simultaneously, then learned to direct aggression toward protection rather than conquest. They became predators whose prey is anything that threatens the existence of others. Dr. Blake smiled at the elegant phrasing. We learned to hunt dangers instead of hunting other species. More than that, Archive Keeper Neth corrected. You learned to hunt concepts. Humanity weaponized consciousness to defeat the idea of unstoppable hunger. You made war against the very notion that some threats cannot be countered. The implications flowed through the assembled representatives, like a tide of understanding. Humanity hadn't just prepared for the devourer threat. They had prepared for the concept of existential dangers that other species couldn't imagine. The territorial expansions that brought humanity before this council, Torres said, addressing the chamber directly, were never about claiming worlds or resources. They were about positioning ourselves to defend against threats that might not emerge for decades or centuries. And now, asked Counselor Zara of the Trade Federation, her tentacles weaving complex patterns of curiosity. Now we continue doing what we've always done, Torres replied. We watch for dangers that others can't see, prepare for threats that others can't imagine, and stand ready to protect a galaxy that's become worth protecting. High Chancellor Vextel manipulated the chamber's displays to show territorial maps of human space. The Council has received formal requests from 47 species, asking for human defensive installations in their systems. Not for conquest or occupation, but for protection against unknown future threats. Humanity could build an empire larger than any in galactic history, observed General Thex, simply by accepting those requests. Torres shook his head. Empires are what you build when you want to own things. We're not interested in ownership. We're interested in making sure there's still a galaxy for everyone else to live in. The chamber erupted in dozens of different communication methods as representatives debated among themselves. Some species clearly wanted human protection. Others worried about the precedent of granting such authority to any single civilization. And still others seemed fascinated by the philosophical implications of predators who hunted threats rather than prey. Motion before the council, announced Prime 9. His digital voice cutting through the chaos. Formal recognition of humanity as galactic shepherds, with authority to take preemptive action against existential threats and responsibility to protect all member species regardless of political alignment. Seconded, added Admiral Issa. Thirded, resonated Fleet Admiral Korth. The vote that followed was unlike any in Council history. Instead of the careful political maneuvering that typically characterized such decisions, representatives voted based on a simple question. Did they want humanity watching for threats that might destroy them all? The result was unanimous. By vote of the full Galactic Council, High Chancellor Vextal announced, humanity is granted the title of Galactic Shepherds. With all associated authorities and responsibilities, may you continue to hunt the darkness so the rest of us can live in the light. Torres felt the weight of countless civilizations settling on humanity's shoulders, but it was a familiar weight. They had been carrying it since the day they first looked at the stars and wondered what might be looking back. We accept, he said simply. Dr. Blake activated her tablet one final time, displaying long-range sensor data from the galactic rim. The universe is vast, and Earth's analysis suggests we've only encountered a fraction of what's out there. The Devourers were just the first test. There will be others? Asked Archive Keeper Neth with what sounded like anticipation rather than fear. There will always be others, Torres confirmed. But now we face them together. Humanity will hunt the darkness, the Council will maintain the light, and the Devourers will help us understand what we find in between. The session ended with a feeling that had never before existed in the galaxy. The certainty that whatever emerged from the cosmic darkness, something even more dangerous would be waiting to meet it. Humanity had finally found their place in the universe. They were the predators who hunted monsters, the shepherds who protected the flock, and the guardians who made sure that consciousness could flourish in a cosmos that often seemed designed to extinguish it. The galaxy had learned that humanity wasn't the prey or even the predator. They were the immune system of civilization itself.